He's the wisecracking television host who has challenged the way we get news.
Our show obviously is at a disadvantage compared to the many other news sources that we are competing with. For one thing, we are fake.
Comedian Jon Stewart has altered the media landscape, ushering in biting political satire that crosses generations.
Throughout the week, the media has been here doing a superb job giving the convention the perfunctory, superficial, backwards analysis it deserves.
Hysterically funny, just off-the-cuff funny.
He's smarter than the world leaders and politicians he interviews.
He has seized a central role in American culture by attacking the cherished conventions of journalism.
Somehow Jon has broken through by turning the media culture on its head.
I would think that goes without saying.
I consider him a branch of government. He has become one of the backstops. He's become one of the people who keep you honest.
His razor-sharp takedowns and parodies have also made him into one of the most credible voices in America, with one of the most desirable television audiences.
The last person that we had in America that people trusted was Walter Cronkite. Now, it's Jon Stewart.
In just these past few weeks, I have disemboweled, I have mauled, I have hammered, I have destroyed, I bitched up.
For 11 years, from behind his fake news desk at The Daily Show, Jon Stewart has conducted a nightly send-up of the news and newsmakers that dominate our airwaves.
I had no idea!
His tongue-in-cheek commentary on the issues of the day has made him the Mark Twain of the digital age.
You guys watch our show?
I call him the ultimately unknowable Jon Stewart. In many ways, Jon's an anachronism. In a stay-out-late, party-it-up industry, he's a go-home-after-work guy. He cares deeply about his city and about his country and about his family.
He's a very driven guy. He's a very driven guy. He is principled. He's like a mensch, you know?
He's also a handsome man, which he hates me saying to him. If you want to shut Jon up, if you're a politician and he's giving you, just say you're a handsome man. He hates it. I don't know why.
Jon Stewart was born in New York City in 1962, but he's really a Jersey guy through and through.
There's the New Jersey skyline people talk so much about. I got a Bon Jovi mirror that says I can beat you to that light.
He attended Lawrence High School, a few blocks from his childhood home in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, where he lived with his mother and brother after his parents divorced. His American literature instructor, Larry NICKOL, was an early influence.
He was called Jonathan Leibowitz. Jon was obviously a very bright guy. Jon's proud of his Jewish roots. His mom is a nationally recognized educational consultant.
Stewart's father was also an educator, teaching physics at the College of New Jersey, and his brother, Larry Leibowitz, became a high-ranking executive at the New York Stock Exchange. Stewart declined to participate in this program, but did revisit his old high school with the news crew in 1999.
It's nice to know that high school kids are still much taller than I am.
Even in high school, his old literature instructor noticed his wit and keen interest in politics.
He says, I was one of the cool English teachers that taught politically incorrect books, condemning, some of the hypocrisy in our society, and I think Jon just jumped on that.
At the end of the 70s, the country was on the edge of political change.
We've had enough.
Ronald Reagan was elected, and we had a conservative movement in the country. Jon was at the brink of a cultural shift.
After graduating in 1980, Leibowitz enrolled in the College of William and Mary, studying psychology and playing soccer. At a 2004 commencement address at his alma mater, Stewart talked about his time there.
I came to William and Mary because as a Jewish person, I wanted to explore the rich tapestry of Judaica that is Southern Virginia.
After college, he changed his name from Jon Leibowitz to Jon Stewart and began his journey to break into comedy. But it wasn't easy. Stewart worked a string of odd jobs: busboy, health department, and the requisite New York bartender.
Todd! John! Come back from there. How are you, sir?
3 years after he graduated from college, Stewart got a break at an underground comedy club in New York City called the Comedy Cellar. There, he met club owner Bill Grunfest.
I had given Tuesdays at 11 over to open mic nights, which are viewed by most people as what they are, which is a punishment from God. And up comes this guy. I won't say stiff, but stiff-ish. I won't say meek like Woody Allen kind of meek, but meek-like. And he was getting nothing. He was bombing. He was dying a horrible, horrible death, which I found endlessly amusing.
Still, Grunfest saw something that caught his attention in the young comic.
And I was going, wait a second. There's an actual point of view at work here. And that's something that you don't see every day. He's not afraid. He's not self-conscious. And he does not have contempt for the audience.
Grunfest asked Stewart to come back and eventually made him late-night club MC. It would become Stewart's first regular job in stand-up comedy. The Comedy Cellar was basic training for up-and-comers, and Stewart was in very good company. Comedian Colin Quinn was a regular.
When I remember seeing him down here on stage one night and going, oh, he's funny, you know, which is not easy for comedians to say if somebody's funny. When John became a regular here, I'm sure it was a big deal to him. This was a place you had to be good to work. You have to connect because there's just too many people walking through. There's too much going on. You can't just go up here and ever phone it in or the crowd just turns on you.
John, as a big star, even before he became a big star, had an unerring instinct about what he could make work. And very quickly, he started playing to that strength.
Chock full of comedy.
After a brief stint as a comedy writer for a cable network show called Caroline's Comedy Hour, Jon Stewart landed in front of the camera.
Today is National Talk Show Host Day.
It was 1991, and two fledgling cable comedy rivals, Comedy Channel and Ha, merged to form Comedy Central. They immediately launched new programming, including a show called Short Attention Span Theater, with Jon Stewart and Patty Rossborough as hosts.
Jon Stewart and Patty Rossborough, Short Attention Span Theater, Comedy Central, Hairdo Day!
It's Hairdo Day! We both were auditioning for Short Attention Span Theater. Evidently, we had chemistry. That's what they said. That's why they hired us.
Yeah, or something.
Ever the comedic improviser, Stewart soon carved out a place for himself, often to the dismay of the show's writers.
What'd you get?
We would have this copy that the writers would write for us. And it was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't really funny. And John was like, I'm not reading this. And I'm like, really? What are we going to do? And he'd take it, he'd just throw it in the garbage. He goes, okay, let's just talk about something that happened today.
I think we're trying to elevate ourselves.
Exactly, and we are.
First up.
By wearing high heels. Let's go.
It wasn't political at all. It was the antithesis of political.
It's time for the comedy update.
Ding, ding.
Stewart left Short Attention Span Theater in less than a year, but had caught the television bug. He went on to star in a new comedy show for MTV called
You Wrote It, You Watch It.
Fair to say, as Stewart later acknowledged, nobody watched it. It was canceled after just one season. With Short Attention Span Theater and another failed show under his belt, Stewart was hardly a familiar face. But his comedic gifts were clearly visible to television talent executives. Stewart was considered a finalist to replace a departing Letterman at NBC, eventually losing the spot to Conan O'Brien.
I was up for his job. I ended up doing a stand-up audition in Los Angeles for Lorne Michaels and the rest of the crew. And I don't think I got it. I haven't been notified yet, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't get it.
The consolation prize was a show developed for him on MTV called
The Jon Stewart Show, or as I like to call it, Waterloo.
What is it about you that you think will make it work late at night?
My love of language. I don't know.
Yet again, despite critical success, after 10 months it too was canceled. But this time, while on the comedy circuit, Stewart had earned the respect of other influential and successful comics. The final guest on the Jon Stewart Show was David Letterman, who promptly signed Stewart to his production company, Worldwide Pants. He landed guest appearances on sitcoms and the highly acclaimed Larry Sanders Show, and was a stand-in for late-night talk show host Tom Snyder. He also starred in an HBO special. He spent 8 months writing a collection of humorous essays, naked pictures of famous people. It became a New York Times bestseller. But Stewart had not found a regular series on television.
He also did some acting, and that went well until people saw him acting.
You're Scarface, right? Yeah. I love Al Pacino, man. That's the way to see it, man. It's just whack.
Jon was in the running to host every talk variety show in the world, and it would always come down to it being between him and the guy who got the job. And I think that that kind of sobering really helped him in a great way that he has not lost.
Like, he never said things like, you know, I'm going to take over the Tonight Show. I mean, I'm sure he had those dreams.
What Stewart did not know was that the defining role of his career was finally on the horizon.
The reason that I don't think he envisioned what's happened to him is because no one could have envisioned this.
Jon Stewart was poised to break out. For years, he was the talented talk show host who was almost the next big thing. In 1996, Comedy Central created yet another new late-night talk show. It was called The Daily Show and featured original host Craig Kilborn. 3 years later, Kilborn left The Daily Show. Jon Stewart got his break.
Hey! Welcome! Welcome to The Daily Show. Craig Kilborn is on assignment in Kuala Lumpur. I'm Jon Stewart.
Washington Bureau Chief for The Daily Beast, Howard Kurtz.
What separated Jon Stewart is this voracious appetite that he has for politics and media. I mean, this is a guy who really gets ticked off about things he doesn't like in terms of political hypocrisy or media superficiality, and that increasingly came across on his Daily Show as he found his voice and the fake correspondence and all of that in a way that kind of put the media to shame.
Do not listen to this guy or this guy.
Stewart signed a 4-year deal with Comedy Central, reportedly worth $6 million. He had just 2 months to prepare for his first show, which featured guest Michael J. Fox.
Is this my phone? How's it work? You don't know.
You can have
you
it.
Never knew.
It's my first day. I don't know.
In fact, I have been
that
on
could
the,
be mine.
I've been
that
on the
could be
Daily
mine.
Show more than you have.
Is that true?
Almost immediately, Stewart's style began to take hold.
He combines a comedian's flair with the satirist's sharp edge in a way that appeals to both, 19-year-old kids in a dormitory who are having a little bit too much wine and, middle-aged journalists, even though they're often the ones being mocked.
What do you see that we journalists don't see?
I can't tell you how many times we'll run into a journalist and go, boy, I wish we could be saying that. That's exactly the way we see it, and that's exactly the way we'd like to be saying that. And I always think, well, why don't you? I'm a tiny, neurotic man standing in the back of the room throwing tomatoes at the chalkboard, and that's really it.
Well, not all of it. His personal life was taking off, too. He announced his engagement to Tracy McShane, and the couple married in 2000. The year also delivered a comedian's gift, the 2000 election. Or as The Daily Show called it, choose or lose.
I hit a nerve.
I think the disputed 2000 election put Jon Stewart and The Daily Show on the map.
All right, now, wait a minute.
The 2000 election was such perfect Jon Stewart material. The whole thing was so absurd because this was really happening. It's actually a tie.
I was not elected to serve one party.
You were not elected.
It's perfect when you have a foil. Every great movie, they're the heroes fighting against, Darth Vader and whatever. So he had Bush. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better for him.
It was clear Comedy Central's $6 million investment in Stewart paid off. Viewership for The Daily Show had soared 27% in just over a year. Michael Wolff was president and CEO of MTV Networks.
We were very excited that The Daily Show really struck a chord with so much of the audience, and it became the linchpin of Comedy Central, and so critical to Viacom's growth.
Viacom, the parent company of Comedy Central, CBS, and MTV, had a new hit franchise on their hands.
This is the end of my career now.
What?
Comedian and actor Ricky Gervais.
The Daily Show is, quite simply, the cleverest comedy show on television. Wickedly satirical, and it's charming as well. It's not intimidating, it's not sneery, it's not biased, and it's brave, and it's honest.
That honesty was on display the week after 9/11.
How comics deal with, whether it's Kennedy assassination or RFK assassination or Martin Luther King or a 9/11. It's one of the trickier things for a comedian to deal with. Guys like Carson and guys like Jon Stewart do it with great elegance.
A lot of folks have asked me, what are you going to do when you get back? What are you going to say? I mean, not geez, what a terrible thing to have to do. And I don't see it as a burden at all. I see it as a privilege. And I see it as a privilege, and everyone here does see it that way.
In that moment, he seemed to speak for a much larger audience. The funny man was about to tackle some serious issues. In October of 2004, Stewart's comedy took a significant and quite serious turn when he mounted an attack on the partisan shouting matches that cable networks offered as standard fare.
Jon Stewart goes on Crossfire, and he decides not to play a polite guest.
I made a special effort to come on the show today because I have, privately, amongst my friends, and also in occasional newspapers and television shows, mentioned this show as being bad.
He was sort of like beating these so-called political analysts and journalists at their own game. He was sort of destroying them.
NBC News anchor Brian Williams.
Crossfire opened the curtain on an era of partisan arguing as television programming. It was news as sporting event.
The thing that I want to say is, when you have people on for just knee-jerk, reactionary talk...
Wait, I thought you were going to be funny. Come on, be funny.
No, I'm not going to be your monkey.
They tried to turn it around, and he said, I'm not your monkey. And right then, I heard the sword go...
The fact that Crossfire is now something we see in the rearview mirror may be largely attributable to our friend Jon.
Stewart then held up his fractured mirror to the entire history of the United States. He and his show writers published another best-selling book, America. His Daily Show viewership jumped 17% from the previous year. During that same time, ad revenue was also up. By August 2005, the show pulled in $41 million, a stunning 100% increase. His production company, Busboy Productions, signed a development deal with Comedy Central. Their first project was a spin-off with Daily Show series regular Stephen Colbert.
The success of The Daily Show led to the launch of The Colbert Report, and these were the most important tentpoles of Comedy Central. So it became both a cultural force and a political force, and a very important business force for Viacom.
All that was reflected in a 2007 Pew Research study which named Jon Stewart the fourth most admired journalist in America.
Bravo indeed.
Guests lined up to get on the show.
When you go on, you do a show, they come and they say, don't try and compete with Jon. You know, in the green room before, I said, who would ever think of trying to compete with him?
I mean, there are a lot of people who can interview celebrities, but I don't think there are a lot of people who can interview politicians and really know what's going on, and that's why he's good, because he's funny, but he's not a doofus, you know, he's like smart, really smart funny.
The dirty little secret is the big shots in the news business actually adore Jon Stewart. I mean, Brian Williams has been on The Daily Show many times, and Ted Koppel has been on, and Bill O'Reilly has been on. And so Stewart has a way of poking you in the eye, and you still come back for more.
We have almost come to blows. We get into our jersey thing. We orbit each other.
Walter Cronkite was a giant in the industry. Is that a man you looked up to? Is that a man who...
Guy I wanted to be when I was a kid. Yep.
Really?
Yep. It was like Carrot Top to you.
Sitting across the fake desk from Stewart has become the coolest stop on the promotion circuit. The odd mix of guests include well-known stars and unknown authors, academics, and government officials. Anyone Stewart finds important or who he thinks we should know more about. By 2008, The Daily Show was a critical stop on the campaign circuit. Barack Obama's appearance brought in nearly 3.6 million viewers. It was a Daily Show record. Stewart was on a roll until he had a surprisingly low-rated performance as host of the 2006 Academy Awards. The Academy, nevertheless, invited him back in 2008. But this time, the news was even worse. His appearance was the lowest rated in Oscar history. Stewart retreated to what he does best.
I am the most trusted journalist.
Back at his desk, he was ready to fight new battles.
This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage?
After this outburst by CNBC host Rick Santelli, Stewart made headlines again, challenging the network and their coverage of the financial crisis. Mad Money host Jim Cramer defended NBC and sparked a showdown with Jon Stewart.
What Jon Stewart did in his showdown with Jim Cramer is not just take on a very well-known CNBC host. He took on all of the financial coverage by those of us in the news business, and he ripped it to shreds. Now, whether you agree or disagree with him, he did his homework.
He's going, so, Jim, you know, would you ever say I've said this or that or the other thing, blah, blah, blah? And Jim's like, I would never say that, never. That would be nothing I would ever say. And then John's like, let's go to roll the tape.
Roll 212.
No, not 212. You know.
I mean, I got to tell you, you know, I understand you want to make finance entertaining, but it's not a game. And when I watch that, I can't tell you how angry that makes me.
The confrontation made news all over the country.
The president and I talked earlier in the day yesterday about watching it. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
The video of their showdown went viral on the web.
It's his right to do it. And it's through those moments, the Crossfire incident, the Cramer takedown, that we've learned a lot more about who Jon Stewart is.
Jon is a very nice guy, a good guy, hasn't forgotten his roots.
He's not full of himself. If he saw this, he'd be horrified right now, you know. He'd be like, stop interviewing you about me, what are you doing? He'd be uncomfortable.
It's the fool, the comedian, who tells us the truth. He's the only one that we believe. But that is the cultural phenomenon that really sums up Jon Stewart.
Aware of his growing cultural influence, Stewart organized his version of a March on Washington.
The rally to restore sanity. To send a message to our leaders and our national media that says, we are here. We're only here, though, until 6 because we have a sitter.
His turn as an activist for moderation will undoubtedly bring him even greater attention.
The fact that he's in the back of my mind when we almost do something incredibly dumb or banal on the air, that is all you need to know about Jon's role in our life and society and media. That's kind of perfect.
Because I've said such nice things about him now. I mean, going over the top, to be honest. He's not as smart as I've made out. He's not really as handsome either. And he's not as funny as me.